There are wounds that do not bleed, scars that remain unseen, and shadows cast not by the sun, but by the collapsed ruins of forgotten battles fought in the silence of your own soul. These are the marks of hidden trauma, the silent architect of your affections, the ghost behind every embrace, every rejection, every trembling hesitation before love. Have you ever looked into the mirror and felt that the face staring back carried a burden it could not name? A voice speaking in tongues long buried beneath years of pretending to be whole? What if I told you that every relationship you have cradled or crushed was built upon the rubble of an older war, one you did not choose, but were drafted into the moment you first learned to fear touch, to distrust safety, or to confuse pain with presence? The past does not sleep within you, it breathes. It whispers through your desires like a serpent curling around every choice you believe is yours. And yet, you call this freedom. You walk through life believing you're the author of your heart's decisions. But what if you are merely reciting lines from a script written in the dark by hands that once trembled in terror or despair? Every time you flee intimacy just as it begins to bloom, every time you betray trust without knowing why, every time you kneel at the altar of loneliness, these are not mistakes. They are rituals. Echoes of a trauma so deeply buried that even you no longer remember its name, only its weight. Ask yourself, who were you before the world taught you to armor your softness and sarcasm, your vulnerability and control, your longing and silence? What child lies frozen beneath the layers of your carefully constructed self, a self that believes it has moved on, while secretly reenacting ancient dramas with every lover, friend, and enemy it dares to meet? The truth waits beneath your skin, coiled like a serpent gnawing on its own tail. It will not reveal itself gently. It demands more than curiosity. It requires descent into the labyrinth where your oldest fears whisper your truest names. To follow is to risk everything, for only those willing to lose themselves may find the thread that leads back, not to who they were, but to who they might become. You've been told that love is a choice, that trust is earned, that intimacy is built brick by brick through effort and compromise. But what if none of it were true? What if the foundation upon which you stand was not laid by your own hands, but carved into your bones long before you could speak, think, or choose? The trauma that lives beneath your skin does not announce itself with screams or scars. It moves in silence, like the tide beneath a sleeping ship, pulling you towards shores you do not remember choosing. Consider this. Every time you reach for someone's hand, did you truly reach them or for an echo? Every kiss, every promise, every trembling moment when vulnerability threatened to rise, was it truly yours, or merely the reenactment of something older than memory, deeper than will? You believe you are seeking connection, but what if you are only chasing ghosts? Not those of others, but your own, fragmented, forgotten, yet ever present in the way you twist affection into pain, closeness into suffocation, desire into fear. There is a wound inside you that is never healed, not because it is too deep, but because you refuse to see it. You have mistaken its presence for strength, its silence for absence. You call it resilience, but it is nothing more than survival masquerading as identity. And still, it speaks. Through your nightmares, through your hesitations, through the strange comfort you feel in chaos. It whispers to you in moments of peace. This cannot last. It pulls you back into familiar darkness, where pain is known and therefore safe. Why do you return to the same patterns? Why do you find yourself falling into the same chasms, meeting the same faces, repeating the same mistakes, even when you know better? Because knowledge is not enough. Knowing does not heal. Knowing only makes you aware of the cage while you continue pacing within it. The mind may understand chains, but the soul must break them. And the soul does not speak in logic. It speaks in symbols, in dreams, in wounds that ache in silence, demanding recognition. You were once small, smaller than you allow yourself to remember, small enough to believe that the world was made to be endured, not embraced, small enough to fold yourself into corners so tight that even now, as an adult, You carry the shape of that child, contorted, cautious, always waiting for the next blow. And still, you tell yourself you are free. Free from the past. Free from pain. Free from the ones who taught you how to suffer without screaming. But freedom is not the absence of chains. It is the courage to scream when they cut into your flesh, to tear at them until they break, until your voice becomes your weapon, until you stop apologizing for the sound of your own breaking. What if the relationships you build are not expressions of love, but rituals of atonement? What if every person you cling to, reject, idealize, or destroy is simply a mirror, cracked, distorted, but still reflecting something vital, something buried beneath years of performance, of pretending to be whole? You give and take not out of desire, but desperation. Not because you want to connect, but because you are afraid of being alone with the truth that gnaws at your ribs in the quiet hours of the night. And what is that truth? That somewhere along the way, you learn to survive by becoming someone else. That the version of you who walks through life, charming, intelligent, successful, broken, is only a mask worn over the face of a child who never got to ask why it hurts so much to exist. That child still lives inside you, not as a memory, but as a force, shaping your decisions, dictating your boundaries, whispering in your ear when you're closest to surrendering to love. You think you are protecting yourself. But what if you are only protecting the illusion of safety? The illusion that if you remain distant enough, controlled enough, armored enough, then no one can touch you. No one can hurt you again. But what is worse, to be hurt or to live in constant fear of being hurt? Which prison is heavier, the one built by others or the one you built yourself? You have spent years constructing walls, beautiful walls, strong walls, walls made of intellect, humor, detachment, sarcasm, walls built with the bricks of your achievements, your independence, your refusal to need anyone. But what lies behind them? Who waits in the shadows of your fortress, pounding on the doors, begging to be seen? The answer terrifies you, because behind those walls is not strength. It is terror. It is the raw, bleeding core of your humanity. It is the part of you that knows it was never meant to survive alone, that craves connection not as a luxury, but as oxygen, that understands, in ways you try to forget, that to be human is to be vulnerable, to be touched, to be seen. And yet, you keep building, higher, thicker, colder, because to tear them down would mean facing everything you have run from, all the grief, the rage, the longing, the shame. To let someone in would mean admitting that you are not invincible, that you are not in control, that you are not okay. But perhaps being okay is not the goal. Perhaps the goal is to be real, real in your pain, real in your fear, real in your hunger for something deeper than distraction, something truer than transactional love, real in the understanding that no amount of perfection, performance, or pretense will ever fill the void left by the child who was never allowed to be fully seen. And what is the cost of not seeing? It is a slow erosion of self, the gradual disappearance of your voice beneath the weight of expectation, the replacement of your desires with scripts written by hands long gone, but whose fingerprints remain on your heart, the betrayal of your own truth in favor of illusions that feel safer than reality. You do not have to stay trapped, but to escape, you must first admit that you are imprisoned, not by others, but by the stories you tell yourself about who you are, who you deserve, and what love should look like. These stories are not yours. They were handed to you by people who were also broken, also searching, also lost. And yet, you wear them like armor, believing they protect you, when in truth, they are the very thing keeping you from healing. Ask yourself, who would I be without the need to prove my worth? Who would I be without the fear of abandonment? Who would I be without the compulsion to repeat cycles I claim to hate? Would I still recognize myself? Or would I finally begin to meet the person I have spent my entire life running from? This is the question that haunts every relationship you have ever had. This is a silent demand hidden in every argument, every withdrawal, every moment of intimacy that felt like danger. You're not afraid of losing the other. You are afraid of finding yourself. E. And so you create distance. You sabotage. You withdraw. You push love away just as it begins to warm your bones. You confuse closeness with collapse. You mistake vulnerability for weakness. You hide behind masks so intricate that even you forget they are not your face. But here is the secret they never told you. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the birthplace of power. For only in the act of revealing yourself, truly, deeply, terrifyingly, do you reclaim the right to exist beyond the roles assigned to you. Only in allowing yourself to be seen do you begin to rewrite the script. Only in daring to be unmasked do you discover that the monster under your bed was never there. It was only the echo of your own fear. And what is fear if not the shadow of possibility? Fear tells you that you are not enough, that you will be rejected, that you are unworthy, that you must earn love, that you must perform it, that you must control it, that you must contain it, that you must survive it. But what if love is not something to survive? What if love is something to surrender to, not as a conquest, but as a communion, not as a possession, but as a mirror, not as a guarantee, but as a risk? And what if the greatest risk is not in loving, but in refusing to? You've been taught that pain is a sign of failure, that discomfort means something is wrong, that if a relationship hurts, you must leave. But what if the pain is not a signal to flee, but a call to go deeper? What if the discomfort is not a warning, but a doorway? Inside every difficult relationship lies a reflection of your deepest wounds. Inside every toxic dynamic is a lesson you have refused to learn. Inside every failed attempt at connection is a chance to confront the parts of yourself that still operate from fear rather than freedom. You do not need new relationships. You need a new relationship with yourself. One that does not flinch at the sound of your own name spoken in silence. One that does not recoil at the sight of your own tears. One that does not punish your softness. One that does not betray your needs. One that does not abandon you the moment you become inconvenient to your own narrative. This is a work. This is the unraveling. This is a descent into the abyss that does not swallow you, but reveals you. And the abyss does not ask for your strength. It asks for your surrender, to stop fighting the pain, to stop numbing the ache, to stop running from the truth that pulses beneath your skin like a second heartbeat. Only then will you begin to see, not with your eyes, but with your soul. Only then will you understand that every failed relationship, every painful goodbye, every moment of unbearable loneliness was not punishment, but preparation. Preparation for the moment when you finally turn inward, when you finally stop looking outside yourself for what can only be found within. When you finally realize that the love you seek is not across the room, across the table, across the ocean. It is within you, waiting, burning, refusing to be denied any longer. And when you finally meet it, not as a concept, not as a theory, but as a living, breathing, trembling truth, you will no longer need to chase, manipulate, control, or fear love, because you will already be it. And in that knowing, every pattern will dissolve, every wound will breathe, every cycle will end, not because you willed it, but because you finally allowed yourself to see, to feel, to be. And in that final act of radical honesty, not with others, but with yourself, you will finally be FRE. And so the curtain falls, not with a bang, but with a breath. A breath you did not know you were holding. A breath that smells of old wounds and new beginnings. You have walked through fire and emerged not untouched, but transformed. Not healed, perhaps, but seen. And in being seen, something within you has shifted. Something ancient. Something buried beneath layers of performance, pain, and silent rebellion against a world that asked too much and gave too little. The patterns remain, yes, but now they tremble. They waver under the weight of your awareness. For knowledge is not enough, but seeing Seeing is the first act of rebellion against the unseen forces that have shaped your life. You are no longer just a prisoner of your past. You are its witness. And from witness comes choice. From choice comes change. From change comes a terrifying, glorious possibility of becoming who you were always meant to be, before the world taught you how to survive by forgetting yourself. What if the greatest love story you will ever live is not with another, but with a part of you that has waited lifetimes to be acknowledged? The child who learned to hide, the soul that learned to suffer in silence, the heart that still believes it must earn what should be given freely, belonging, safety, love. This is not the end. It is only the beginning of the end of pretending. And now the question rises, not from me, but from somewhere deep inside you. What will you do with what you now know? Will you turn away as you've done before? Will you bury this truth beneath distractions, achievements, and the fragile illusion of control? Or will you lean in? Will you allow yourself to feel the full weight of your humanity, not as a curse, but as a calling? To be broken is not to be lost. To be wounded is not to be unworthy. To be afraid is not to be alone. There's a path forward, not paved with certainty, but with courage. Courage to look inward. Courage to grieve. Courage to forgive, not others, perhaps, but yourself. Courage to finally stop running from the very thing you have always been searching for, the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are when no one is watching. And if you choose to walk this path, know this: you are not walking it alone. Others have walked before you. Others walk beside you now. And still more will follow, guided by the light of your own unfolding. So take the next step, not because it is easy, but because it is yours. And if you have come this far, if something within you trembled, if a door cracked open even slightly, if, for a fleeting moment, you saw the echo of your true self in the spaces between these words, then let this be more than a passing feeling. Let it be a commitment to yourself, to your story, to your unrealized potential. Click like not as a reflex, but as an act of recognition. Comment not to fill silence, but to give voice to what is yet to take shape. Share not out of impulse, but as a whisper to someone who may need to hear this now just as deeply as you once did. And subscribe not out of habit, but by conscious choice to continue this journey. Because this is only the first step. The true awakening lies ahead. And it begins the moment you decide to stop running and finally allow yourself to see